It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The final period of the day, Alina Redfeather, quiet and observant, sat at the back of room 213. Her eyes weren't on the clock or the teacher's notes on the board, but somewhere far away, somewhere in her head. And when it happened, nobody saw it coming. Alina sat there, her fingers trembling around a pen, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Her chest felt tight, her breaths shallow. She tried to focus on the page in front of her, tried to ignore the familiar sensation creeping in. It was nothing new. She'd felt it before, but that didn't make it any easier. The room around her buzzed with the low hum of the class, students chatting, phones buzzing. Alina's mind was a whirlwind, but she stayed quiet, trying to blend into the background. She had learned long ago that the less you drew attention to yourself, the better. No one needed to know about the battle she fought inside her head. No one needed to know that her body was failing her in a way she couldn't control. She had learned how to hide it, how to act like everything was fine, even as the tightness in her chest grew worse, even as her vision began to swim. She kept her head down, focusing on the notebook in front of her. But inside, she was starting to panic. Her hands shook slightly, but she clenched the pen tighter, trying to steady them. It wasn't supposed to happen here. Not now. Not in front of them. She couldn't let it. Not in front of her classmates. Not in front of anyone. She just needed to make it through the day. And then, just like that, the world around her began to blur. The air became thick, suffocating. She tried to focus on her breathing, to calm herself, but the tightness in her chest only worsened. Every breath felt harder to take. Her hand, still clutching the pen, started to shake uncontrollably. The words on the page blurred together. She wanted to shout, to call out for help, but she couldn't. The pressure in her chest grew more intense, and her vision narrowed. And then it happened. Her body jerked violently, her arms flailing as she collapsed onto the floor. Her chest heaved, her body shaking uncontrollably. The classroom fell silent, eyes wide, mouths slightly open in shock. It wasn't just a moment of panic, it was a seizure, and no one was prepared for it. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but there was no sound, just silence. No one moved at first. No one knew what to do. Her classmates froze, unsure of what was happening, unsure of how to help. And in that moment, Alina wasn't just invisible. She was alone. Ms. Keller, the teacher, turned at the sound of the fall, but it was too late. Alina's body was already jerking violently on the floor. Still, Ms. Keller hesitated, unsure of what to do. Her feet felt rooted to the floor as the classroom's chaotic silence grew louder. Alina could feel her body thrashing against the floor, her limbs uncooperative, like a puppet with its strings cut. She couldn't stop it. She couldn't control it. And all she wanted was to scream for someone, anyone, to help her. But that wasn't what happened. Instead, there was the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, as someone stepped into the room. The camera cuts to the door, Principal Clark entering the scene, standing at the threshold, her expression unreadable. She didn't rush in to help. She didn't even flinch. She simply stood there. She wasn't there to save her. She was there to contain the situation, to make sure this didn't become a problem. The security guard was already on his way. Principal Clark spoke. Her voice was calm, methodical, as if this was just another problem to be solved, another issue to be dealt with. Call the security guard. We need to make sure this doesn't get out of hand." Her words cut through the tension like a knife. The coldness in her voice was like an icy wind, extinguishing the small hope Alina had that someone would actually help her. They weren't here to save her. They were here to control the situation, to contain the problem. Alina's body continued to spasm, each movement out of her control. Her breath came in short bursts, and it felt like the world was slipping further away from her. The camera tightens on her face, her expression blank, but the fear behind her eyes is palpable. She was fighting for control. But what do you do when the people you rely on to help you are the very ones that make you feel like a problem to be fixed? She wasn't the problem, but they were already treating her like one. Alina's body was still. The room was eerily quiet. Her limbs twitched involuntarily, but the silence in room 213 was deafening. Her classmates froze, unsure of what to do, their eyes wide, mouths slightly open in shock. The only sound was her labored breathing, echoing in the stillness. Ms. Keller turned, finally noticing the chaos unfolding before her. Her gaze landed on Alina's convulsing body, and her face turned pale. For a moment, she stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The tension in the room built, but no one moved. Principal Clark appeared in the doorway, her silhouette imposing, her expression unreadable. She stepped into the room with deliberate calm, the sound of her heels on the floor cutting through the stillness. "Call the security guard. We need to make sure this doesn't get out of hand." The words were cold, mechanical. She didn't rush to help Alina, didn't even pause to check on her. She simply stood there, watching the scene unfold like a problem to be solved. The security guard arrived moments later, his movements slow, unhurried. He stood there, watching Alina's body thrash against the floor, his arms crossed as though he were observing an inconvenient disturbance. "Is she all right?" he asked, but the question was more out of habit than concern. Ms. Keller hesitated for a moment, her voice trembling as she answered, "Shouldn't we call for help? She needs medical attention." But Principal Clark didn't even look her way. Her gaze remained fixed on Alina. "She's fine, just needs to be checked. We can't have this turning into something it isn't." Alina's head jerked again, her body twitching violently. Her vision blurred, her chest felt tighter, and the pressure in her throat made it almost impossible to breathe. She couldn't move. She couldn't scream for help. Her body was betraying her, and there was nothing she could do about it. The guard knelt down beside her, the metal of his belt buckle scraping against his pants as he reached for her bag. Her belongings were scattered across the floor, her pencil case, textbooks, a half-empty water bottle. The seizure had robbed her of any sense of dignity. Her heart pounded in her chest as she lay there, unable to stop them, unable to stop the invasion of her personal space. Her things, her most personal belongings, touched, tossed aside, and treated as if they were just as disposable as she felt in that moment. Her phone was pulled from her bag next, the cracked screen staring up at the security guard. He held it up in front of Principal Clark, who studied it with a clinical indifference. She said nothing, but handed the phone back to the guard. No one seemed to care about what Alina needed. No one was rushing to help her. They were just following protocol. Alina's breath was shallow now, each inhale a struggle. Her mind raced. Why? Why was this happening? Her heart sank with the realization that she wasn't just having a seizure. She was being treated like a problem to be fixed. She wasn't a person in this moment, just another incident for them to manage. Ryan sat in the back of the room, his eyes flickering between his phone and Alina. He watched, paralyzed. His fingers were trembling slightly, the phone in his hands feeling heavier by the second. He could feel the weight of the room, the stares of his classmates, but still, he did nothing. He stayed silent. His guilt was suffocating, but it was easier to remain passive, to blend into the background. He could already feel the shame crawling up his throat, but he couldn't break the silence. The security guard finished with her bag and stood up, dusting his hands off, completely unaffected by what he had just done. He handed the bag to Ms. Keller, who took it, still looking unsure. But the silence in the room had only grown thicker. No one was stepping in. No one was trying to stop this. Alina's breath hitched. She wanted to speak, to demand someone help her, but she couldn't form the words. Her body was paralyzed. Principal Clark finally turned her attention away from Alina and addressed the room. Her voice was cold, devoid of any empathy. "We've checked her bag. We're done here." The students slowly started to turn away, their eyes shifting nervously. They couldn't meet Alina's gaze. None of them could. They had all just witnessed something, and they were unsure how to handle it. They were unsure if they should have even cared. Ryan stood, still silent. His gaze lingered on Alina, but he didn't approach her. Instead, he slowly started to back away, his feet shuffling beneath him. His eyes met Ms. Keller's, then Principal Clark's, but he couldn't find the courage to speak. The moment was over, and he was a part of it now. Alina's heart ached. Did anyone care? Did anyone see what was happening to her? She was already invisible in their eyes, but now she felt it deeper than ever. She wasn't even human anymore, just something that needed to be checked, something to be contained. She had become a problem, not a person. And as Principal Clark turned and walked toward the door, her expression still cold and impassive, Alina realized the truth. They were never going to help her. The next morning, everything changed. Alina walked through the school hallway, her heart heavy in her chest. She had hoped the day would be different. She had hoped the whispers from yesterday would fade into nothingness, but they hadn't. Instead, they had grown louder. Her humiliation had gone viral. Her face, her body, was now an object for everyone to comment on. It started slowly at first, a few whispers here, a glance there. But as soon as she entered the hall, she knew. It was all over. Her image was everywhere. As she made her way toward her locker, she caught glimpses of her phone screen on the devices around her. It was the same. The video, the one of her seizure, the one where her body had jerked uncontrollably on the floor, her limbs flailing, her mind helpless. She opened her locker and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't want anyone to see. She tried to ignore it, tried to focus on something, anything, but the words that echoed in her head kept rising to the surface. Why did they do this to me? Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw it immediately. Another notification, another message, another comment. She couldn't escape it. Didn't know you could have a seizure just to skip class. The text stared back at her, cold and mocking, making her stomach twist. Her hands shook as she held the phone, trying to steady herself, but the words kept coming. The comments, the shares, the likes. It was all spiraling out of control, and Alina was at the center of it all. Her pain had become entertainment. The sting of the comments, the cruel words, burned through her. But even more than that was the realization that she couldn't escape it. It was on everyone's screens. Everyone was laughing. Everyone was talking. Ryan's name flashed across her screen. She opened the message. "Alina, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do." Her heart pounded in her chest. Ryan had seen it too. He knew. He had been a part of this. He had watched it all unfold, and now he was the one to reach out. But it felt hollow. It felt empty. Ryan had done nothing when she needed him. He had stood there in silence while she was left to deal with her most vulnerable moment alone. And now he was apologizing. She stared at the message for a long time, her fingers hovering over the screen. She wanted to respond. She wanted to tell him how she felt, how betrayed she felt, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. She turned the phone off and shoved it back into her pocket. In the cafeteria, the mood was different today. The usual noise and chatter were there, but it was more subdued. The conversations felt like they were all about her. People whispered, stole glances, and then quickly looked away when Alina caught their gaze. They were talking about her, not to her. About her. Alina sat down at an empty table, pushing her food around her plate without really looking at it. The cafeteria felt like a zoo. She was on display. She could feel the eyes on her, the whispers just behind her. She knew they were watching, commenting. She was the spectacle. Ryan walked past her, though, but he didn't stop. His head was down, eyes focused on his phone, avoiding her stare. He had seen her. He knew she was there, but he kept walking. His face was a mask, but she could see the guilt in his eyes. It was the same guilt he had carried since the moment she fell to the floor. But he didn't stop. He didn't speak. She watched him walk away. He wasn't even trying to fix it. Her phone buzzed again, this time a notification from Lydia. "Alina, you okay?" It was the first message that felt like someone cared, but it was too late. The damage was done. The image was out there. The words were out there. Nothing would ever be the same. She wanted to respond, but she couldn't find the words. She couldn't find the strength. Ryan sat down at his usual table, his stomach in knots. He hadn't looked at Alina when he walked past her. He couldn't. He had already seen the image. He had already seen what happened. But the guilt, it ate him alive. He knew he should have done something. He knew he could have stepped in, but he hadn't. He stared at his phone again. The image of Alina, vulnerable and exposed, was still open on the screen. His stomach churned at the thought of it. He couldn't erase it. He couldn't erase the guilt. He texted her again. He tried, but he couldn't find the right words. "I'm sorry, Alina. I should have said something. I should have helped you." He stared at the message, feeling like it was meaningless. How could he apologize for something so big? What did a text even mean anymore? Alina pushed the rest of her lunch away and stood up, gathering her things. She couldn't sit there anymore. She couldn't stay in the cafeteria and pretend everything was normal. The whispers, the stares, they were suffocating. She walked out of the cafeteria, her mind racing. As she made her way down the hall, she saw more faces, more whispers. She was everywhere. She could feel their eyes on her, could hear them talk about her in hushed tones. When she got to the bathroom, she locked the door behind her, leaning against it. She felt like she was going to suffocate. She couldn't breathe. The world was closing in on her. She looked up into the mirror, her reflection staring back at her, pale, eyes empty, lips trembling. She was nothing but a shadow of herself. Her phone buzzed again. It was another text from Lydia. "Alina, I'm here for you, okay? Whatever you need, we'll get through this." Alina stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her heart pounding in her chest. She stared at her phone. The text from Lydia was a lifeline, but in that moment, it felt like nothing. The damage had been done. There was no going back. What would she do next? Would she let the world keep tearing her apart, or would she find the strength to fight back? Alina's fight is only just beginning. How far will she go to reclaim her dignity? Subscribe to Storysphere to follow her journey and find out what happens next. Alina's breath was shallow as she walked toward the school's main office. The weight of the situation was unbearable, yet here she was, ready to face it head on. She hadn't slept well the night before, and even now, the tremors of the humiliation from the viral video lingered in her bones. But today was different. Today, she wasn't going to let them decide who she was. The doors of the school boardroom loomed ahead, and with each step, Alina could feel her heart pounding louder in her chest. This was the moment, the confrontation. Lydia stood beside her, her expression uncertain, but her presence was a comfort. She was the only one who hadn't abandoned Alina, the only one who had stood by her from the beginning. They reached the door. Alina stopped, taking a deep breath, but the world felt like it was moving in slow motion. Principal Clark was already sitting at the head of the long table, her posture perfect, her eyes cool. Beside her sat Ms. Keller and a few other administrators who were involved in the decision-making. All of them had the same cold expression, like they were about to review a case. "Alina, Lydia," Principal Clark said, her voice almost mechanical. "Please, take a seat." They sat down. Alina's hands trembled, but she kept her head held high, her gaze fixed straight ahead. She wasn't going to let them make her feel small anymore. The conversation began in a monotone, with Principal Clark asking a few procedural questions about the events of the previous day. But Alina's mind was somewhere else. She wasn't interested in being polite. She wasn't interested in their concerned tone. She had come here to be heard. After a few questions, Alina could feel the tension building. She wasn't about to sit here and be treated like a problem anymore. She cleared her throat. "I'm not here to be lectured. I'm here to be heard," Alina said, her voice steady. "You had me searched, like I was a criminal, when I was having a seizure. I was not the problem." Principal Clark raised an eyebrow, a subtle move, but it said enough. She wasn't ready for the confrontation to get this real, but Alina wasn't done. She had been silenced long enough. "I need you to understand," Alina continued, her hands gripping the armrest of her chair. "What happened to me was a failure on your part. You didn't treat me like a person. You treated me like an issue." There was a moment of silence. Alina felt the room shift slightly, the power dynamics subtly changing, but it wasn't enough yet. The weight of the situation was still hanging in the air, like a storm waiting to break. Principal Clark opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Lydia cut in. "Alina is right," Lydia said, her voice shaking but strong. "You didn't listen to her. You ignored her, and now you're trying to sweep it all under the rug. This isn't just about a seizure. It's about the way you treat students like her. The administrators in the room exchanged uneasy glances, but the tension in the air was palpable. The silence stretched on, and Alina could feel the power shift. But just as she felt a flicker of hope, something unexpected happened. Principal Clark leaned forward, eyes narrowing, and spoke in a tone that was surprisingly calm, but sharp. "You're right, we made a mistake, but that's not the real issue here." Alina froze. The real issue? What was she talking about? Principal Clark continued. "The video of you, well, it's caused a lot of disruption in the school. We've had parents calling, students talking. It's become a distraction. It's been taken out of context, and that's your fault, Alina. You've caused unnecessary chaos, and now we have to deal with the aftermath." Alina's mind raced as the words hit her like a punch to the gut. It was not her seizure that had caused the chaos. It was the video. And according to Principal Clark, it was her fault for letting it happen. "No, it's not my fault," Alina replied, her voice a bit shakier than she'd intended. "I didn't want this to happen. I didn't ask for this." But Principal Clark didn't flinch. "You didn't ask for it, but you're the one who let it get out of hand. You didn't even try to stop it." Alina's chest tightened. The floor seemed to drop away beneath her. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This wasn't a conversation about justice or accountability. It was a conversation about blame. They were shifting it onto her. The room grew quieter as Alina struggled to breathe, the words cutting through her like a blade. She felt her hands clench into fists. How could they do this to her? After everything she'd been through, they were blaming her. "You're not the victim here, Alina. You've created a spectacle out of your own pain," Principal Clark continued, her voice colder than ever. "And now we have to fix it. We'll be taking disciplinary action." The words hit Alina like a slap across the face. Disciplinary action. She was the one who'd been violated, the one who had been humiliated, and they were talking about disciplining her. Alina's mind spun, the words of Principal Clark echoing in her ears. She was the problem. She had created the chaos. Her stomach churned. The truth she had hoped for, the justice she had fought for, was slipping further and further away. And just as she opened her mouth to protest, Principal Clark's next words hit her like a bombshell. "We're expelling you, Alina, effective immediately." Alina's battle is only getting started. How far will she go to stand up for herself in a world that wants to tear her down? Alina stood frozen in the boardroom, her stomach twisted into tight knots. The weight of Principal Clark's words hung in the air like a suffocating cloud. Expelled. The word echoed in her mind louder than anything else. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. Not after everything she'd been through. Not after the humiliation, the isolation, the seizure. She couldn't be expelled for that. But as Principal Clark's cold eyes bore into her, it became clear that this was no accident. She wasn't just being punished for the viral video. She was being punished for speaking up, for having a voice, for standing out. Alina tried to speak, to protest, but her voice caught in her throat. Disbelief clouded her thoughts. The air in the room felt too thick. She wanted to scream. She wanted to lash out. But all that came out was a quiet, shaky breath. "This is not a decision we make lightly, Alina." Principal Clark's voice was steady, calculated. "Your actions have disrupted the entire school. We can't allow students to think they can act out without consequence. It wasn't just the seizure. It wasn't just the video. This was about control. This was about silencing her, erasing her, making her disappear. And they had the power to do it, to make her invisible again. Lydia, who had been sitting beside her in tense silence, now stood up. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock and fury. She leaned over, placing a hand on Alina's arm, a silent gesture of support. "This isn't right." Lydia's voice was shaky, but there was a fire in it now. "Alina deserves to be heard, not punished." Principal Clark's gaze turned to Lydia. The icy composure never left her face. "I'm afraid your opinion doesn't change the facts. Alina has broken our rules, and now she must face the consequences." Principal Clark's eyes narrowed as she glanced towards the rest of the administration, who silently nodded in agreement. "This matter is final." Alina felt her chest tighten, expelled. She had always been careful, always stayed in the background, and now this. She had trusted the system. She had trusted them. She had believed that someone would help her when she needed it most. But they hadn't. They never would. The door to the boardroom opened, and Ryan walked in. Alina's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know whether to feel relief, anger, or something else entirely. He hadn't come to her side when she needed him the most. And now, after everything, here he was. Ryan's eyes darted nervously between Principal Clark, Alina, and the rest of the room. He was holding his phone in his hand, looking like he had no idea what he was supposed to say. "Ryan, sit down." Principal Clark gestured toward the empty chair. Her voice was sharp, almost too sharp, and Alina felt the heat of her anger simmering beneath the surface. She had to keep her composure. But Ryan, he didn't get to fix things now. It was too late. Ryan sat down, his hands trembling. He looked at Alina, his gaze filled with guilt, but there was something else there too. Something he wasn't saying. He didn't speak. He didn't apologize. He didn't try to explain. He just sat there, looking at his phone, his fingers moving nervously over the screen. And that was it. That was all he had. He had failed her. Alina stood there, the weight of everything crashing down on her. The system had already decided. Her future was slipping away. Her voice, her dignity, her life. All of it was being dismissed in a single breath. Lydia wasn't giving up. She grabbed Alina's hand, pulling her closer. "You can't just let them do this to you, Alina. You have to fight back. You have to show them you won't go down without a fight." Alina looked at Lydia, but the decision felt impossible. Fighting back meant risking it all. It meant facing an even harsher reality. She had already been torn down. Could she really keep going? Could she endure this when the whole world seemed to be against her? Principal Clark's voice broke through her thoughts. "You have 48 hours to leave the campus. The decision is final." Her words were like a verdict, but Alina couldn't seem to process them. Her heart pounded in her ears, and the room felt too small. She had no choices left. No one cared about the truth. No one cared about her. And then, in that moment of silence, everything shifted. The air grew thick with uncertainty, with tension, with the unbearable weight of Alina's decision. The phone in Ryan's hand buzzed again, but this time, his face turned ashen. Alina's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it instinctively. But it wasn't a notification from a friend. It was a message from Ryan. She opened it without thinking, reading the words quickly. "Alina, I'm sorry, but there's something you need to know. Alina's heart skipped a beat. Her pulse raced as she opened the message. I didn't want you to find out this way, but Principal Clark was the one who leaked the video. She was the one who pushed it out to the media. I found out last night. She's been trying to keep this quiet, but now that it's out, I couldn't stay silent anymore. You've been used. I'm sorry. Alina's hands shook as she read those words. Principal Clark, the woman who had sat there cold and unaffected, was the one responsible for everything. She had been the one to turn Alina's vulnerability into a spectacle. The woman who had sentenced her to expulsion was also the one who had set everything in motion. Alina's breath caught in her throat as the weight of the revelation sank in. She felt the room spin, her mind racing. How had she been so blind? What was she supposed to do with this? Principal Clark was responsible for everything, and Alina had no idea how deep the rabbit hole went. Could she still fight back? Was it even worth it anymore? Alina's fight just took a shocking turn. What will she do with the truth now that it's out? Subscribe to Story Sphere and stay with her as she takes her stand in the next chapter. The weight of Principal Clark's betrayal crushed Alina as she stepped out of the boardroom. Her chest felt tight, her legs shaky, as if the ground beneath her was no longer steady. The revelation that Clark had orchestrated the release of the video shattered everything she thought she knew. Lydia, walking beside her, noticed the change in Alina's posture. Alina, are you okay? She asked softly, concern clear in her voice. Alina didn't answer right away. She couldn't. She wasn't okay. How could she be after everything? After being exposed? After the entire school turned her into a spectacle for their amusement? How could she possibly go back to life as it was before? You have to do something with this, Alina, Lydia pressed. Clark can't just get away with this. This is bigger than just you. Alina looked at Lydia, but the words didn't come. How could she take action? She had just been expelled. Her future was hanging by a thread. And now this betrayal made it all feel like a game to the people who were supposed to protect her. The hallway was full of murmurs. Alina could feel eyes on her as she passed, whispers trailing behind her like a shadow. Students exchanged glances, all too aware of her. A few even snickered as she walked by. She was no longer a person. She was the girl from the video. She wasn't human anymore, just a problem to be discussed. The next day was worse. Alina couldn't bring herself to return to school. The expulsion, the viral video, the betrayal by someone she had trusted, it all felt too overwhelming. She stayed home, staring blankly at her phone, scrolling through the endless notifications from classmates, the comments on the video still rolling in. She couldn't escape it. Every time she tried to block it out, it came flooding back. And then a new message came through. It wasn't from Lydia or Ryan. It was from Principal Clark. The message was short, concise, a notification for a hearing with the school board, a final review of her expulsion, her last chance. Alina stared at the screen, her last chance to change everything. But was it worth it? The system had already decided. She could feel it in every interaction, in every glance from her classmates, in the indifference of the administration. But Clark's actions had gone too far. This wasn't just about Alina's seizure anymore. This was about power, about control, about silencing those who dared to speak up. Alina knew the stakes were high. If she didn't take action, she would disappear, become nothing more than a footnote in a school's dark history. The weight of that realization hit her hard. She called Lydia. "I need to do something, Lydia. This can't be the end of my story. I can't let Clark get away with this." Lydia's voice was a mix of encouragement and concern. "What do you need from me?" "I need evidence," Alina said, her voice steadying. "If Clark leaked the video, if she's behind this, I need proof. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth." The days leading up to the hearing were a blur. Alina spent every waking moment digging through anything she could find. Emails, text messages, anything that might show Clark's involvement in the video leak. She tracked down the tech department's records, combed through the school's social media posts, anything that might give her a clue as to how it all started. The deeper she dug, the more she uncovered. But it wasn't just the video leak she found. It was worse. She stumbled upon a trail of messages that were not only about her. They were about other students too. Private information shared by administrators, students' personal struggles, their vulnerabilities, all exposed to make sure the school's reputation remained intact. It was all part of a pattern, a system built on secrecy and control. The truth was bigger than Alina. It wasn't just about her anymore. As the hearing approached, Alina's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She had everything she needed, but the cost of exposing this could be more than she was willing to bear. She knew this was her moment, her chance to fight back. But at what price? Would anyone listen to her? Would they see the truth, or would she be silenced once more? Ryan finally reached out again. He texted her, but this time there was no apology. There was just a cold message that cut deeper than anything he had ever said. "I know you've seen it. You know I didn't mean for things to go this far, but don't do it. Don't expose them. It's not worth it." Alina stared at the message, the sting of betrayal resurfacing. Ryan wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was trying to stop her from fighting back. And deep down, she knew why. He wasn't ready to face the truth. Not his own guilt, not the system he had become a part of. She typed a reply, but her fingers hovered over the screen. She couldn't do this anymore. Not with him. Not with anyone who wouldn't stand beside her. "I have to," she typed, her heart pounding. "This isn't just about us anymore." She hit send. She was done being quiet. The hearing arrived. Alina sat across from the school board, her back straight, hands clenched in her lap. Principal Clark sat at the other end, her expression unchanged. Alina could feel the weight of her gaze, cold and dismissive. The room was sterile, too quiet. Every word felt like it was being weighed, measured. But Alina wasn't about to back down. Not now. She spoke first, detailing everything. The seizure, the video, the betrayal. She laid it all out. The facts that had been hidden, the secrets that the school had worked so hard to cover up. She held up the evidence, the messages she had found. The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances as Alina's voice grew stronger with every word. She was rising. She was reclaiming the power they had taken from her. But just when she thought the truth would set her free, a bombshell dropped. As Alina spoke, the door opened. Principal Clark stood up, her eyes cold and filled with anger. She turned to the school board and in a chilling move, she pulled out a document, an apology, not from the school, but from Alina's own family. Alina's family asked that we expel her, you see. They requested it in light of the incident. They felt it was in her best interest. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, Alina, but this isn't just about us. The room fell silent. Alina's heart dropped. She stared at her family's signature on the document, but she didn't understand. Why would they do this? Why would they betray her like this? The truth about Alina's family surfaced in a way that no one expected. And now, with the world watching, Alina's fight was no longer just against the school. It was against everything she knew. Alina's battle has taken an unexpected turn. Will she find out the truth behind her family's betrayal? Alina couldn't breathe. The weight of Principal Clark's words, the document from her family, pressed on her chest, suffocating her. Her mind was spinning as the room around her blurred. For a brief moment, she felt the world tilt beneath her, as if everything she had fought for was slipping away. Her family. They had signed off on her expulsion. They had chosen silence. Why? The confusion and betrayal hit her like a wrecking ball. Everything she had fought for, the strength she'd found in her own voice, the courage to stand up, felt like it was crumbling before her eyes. The school board members were staring at her, their expressions unreadable. The weight of their gaze made her feel small again, like the world was closing in. But then, as the tension in the room thickened, something shifted inside Alina. The fear, the dread, started to transform into something else, something stronger. She stood up, her back straight, her fists clenched at her sides. "I've been quiet for too long," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "But I'm not going to be quiet anymore. I'm not going to let this system destroy me." The room was silent, the board members staring at her, waiting for her to break. But Alina didn't flinch. She had already been broken. She had already been torn apart and put back together again. She was done pretending that this was about her seizure, about a moment of weakness. This was about the injustice, the betrayal, the way they tried to control her. "I don't care about the video. I don't care about your policies or your rules. What I care about is truth. What I care about is justice." Principal Clark opened her mouth to respond, but Alina was ready this time. She wasn't going to let them silence her again. "You are the problem, Principal Clark," Alina said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You took my pain and used it. You took my story and turned it into a spectacle. You're not just an administrator. You're a part of a system that silences kids like me, that treats us like we don't matter." The room was quiet, but Alina could feel the shift. She could feel the power in her voice, the weight of the truth in every word. She had never felt more alive than in that moment. "I'm not just fighting for me anymore," she continued, her eyes sweeping across the room, meeting the gaze of every administrator present. "I'm fighting for every student you've ignored, every child you've silenced, for everyone who doesn't have the voice to speak out. This ends now." The board members looked uncomfortable. Principal Clark was staring at her, her eyes narrowing, but she didn't interrupt. The truth was hanging in the air, undeniable, and for the first time, Alina felt like the world was listening. But then, just when Alina thought she was gaining ground, another twist hit her. The door opened, and in walked Alina's father. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot, as though he hadn't slept for days. He didn't look at Alina, but instead, His eyes locked on Principal Clark, his hands wringing nervously. I didn't know you were here, Alina, he said, his voice shaking. I didn't know about any of this. Alina stared at him, her heart sinking. He had known about the expulsion, but he hadn't told her. He hadn't tried to stop it. He hadn't even fought for her. And now, he was standing there, in front of her, acting like he didn't know. You signed the papers, Alina whispered, the betrayal sinking deep into her chest. Her father's eyes filled with guilt, and he looked away, unable to meet her gaze. I didn't know what else to do, Alina, he said quietly. They told me this was the best option. I thought it would be easier for you. You thought it would be easier for them. Not for me. Alina cut him off, her voice breaking. You didn't even ask me. You didn't ask if I wanted this. You didn't care. Her father took a step back, as if her words physically hit him. His shoulders slumped, and the realization of his failure settled over him like a heavy weight. I'm sorry, he whispered, but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Alina didn't need his apology. She needed his support, and he had given up on her before she even had a chance to fight. As the tension thickened, Alina's phone buzzed once again. It was a message from Ryan. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it, the familiar weight of guilt pulling at her. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. I didn't know about your family's involvement. I wish I could have stopped this. I'm trying to make it right. Alina's breath caught. She read the message over and over, feeling the sting of betrayal all over again. Ryan hadn't just stood by. He had been complicit in her silence. But this time, there was something different. He wasn't trying to fix things anymore. He wasn't offering apologies. He was offering a truth, one that Alina needed to hear. I know what happened. Clark was behind it. I found the records. I can help you fight this. We can bring it all down together. The words hung in the air as Alina's mind raced. Ryan had the evidence. He had everything she needed to take down Principal Clark and expose the truth. But was it too late? Had they already won? Was there any chance left to take back her voice?